So we've said from the beginning, and Meryl, I see, has joined us, and we talked about this. Although Meryl, you figured out how to unmute. I love giving Meryl a hard time for her technological.
What are you doing? What are you doing? Not on my watch. Not on my watch. Meryl, welcome. And I would never insult you like that in front of the whole world.
Oh, I can hear you. I can hear you. All right, good.
Oh, good. Yeah, no, it's not insulting. It's just the truth. And the truth will set me free eventually. But no, I just found this whole discussion really, really interesting. And I wish everybody in the world were hearing it, because it's just, it's inspiring. But people who are deep into the movement have to realize that other people are coming in at the point where they are, which is nowhere. And so it bears retelling the story over and over and over again. What Adam did with Don't Look Up is something unusual, because he told a story that maybe people were not familiar with, or they were exhausted with. There are two camps, either you're exhausted with this subject or you don't know very much about it. And he sort of pulled it together, because laughter is a great way to enter the consciousness. But I do think that you can't underestimate the ignorance of people like myself, who don't know don't have a social media presence, who don't even understand how the fucking thing works. But
Meryl,
it's just important in talking about confronting the corporations and in the banks. We always think of these things as impenetrable castles, and really they're just people. They're just mostly fathers, grandfathers, brothers, and uncles, and they have families. So I'm just thinking, if were a way for the outreach to go to their families, to their wives, to their mothers, to their children, the grandmothers, and to reach around. My mother always said, you don't win an argument with a man by proving him wrong, but there are other ways to get in and to say, you have a stake in this. And it might be just through the families. So if we put names to these corporations, these corporate boards, a lot of the same guys are sitting on the same boards. And if we can reach their families in not, a damning confrontative way, but a way that says, you can be on board with this and we need you. You are responsible. You're reaping the rewards. You have the benefits. Now, look around and see. Don't be blind. Look up. Just look up and just speak up.
And there's a way to, I think that's a beautiful, humane invitation to change. No one wants to be a villain in their own story. So how do we allow people to be heroes, to help us all look up, to help us all move forward with quality and dignified, life? I'm going to come back to you in a second, Meryl, because I want to understand your climate awakening and the way that Adam shared with us. But Adam, I have a specific point to pick with you about the movie. And I haven't had a chance to talk with you. So this is just me. But the Look Up crowd lost, bro. Like, come on, man. In a typical American movie, the good people come out on top in the end. In this atypical movie, we got really attached to these good people and they didn't make it, even though they looked up. So you're here. Are you dooming us? Like, what's going on with you and Look Up?
Well, one of the big reasons we were excited, and one of the big reasons we got these great actors like Meryl and Leo and Jan and Tyler was that, there's a lot of power to story, where we've learned a lot of, we've seen the negative effects of story. We've seen what advertising and misinformation can do to the human view. We've seen the individualistic Ayn Randian sort of narrative push that really ripped our country apart, the US. And as we've learned from great writers like Jane Mayer with Dark Money, or Kim Phillips Fain with Invisible Hands, that wasn't by accident. That was, Adam Curtis, the documentarian, that narratives have a lot of power for us. And so in addition to making the movie a comedy, because we all discussed it, that when you can laugh, that means you have perspective. You see in the darkest times in history, people have this gallows sense of humor, and that means they're still in it. But the second thing with this movie was, this idea that in America or even worldwide, we've become audience members, we become passive consumers. And we have to remember that unless we step up and get active, there is no happy ending guaranteed. And that was one of the reasons we ended the movie the way we did. The other reason we ended the movie the way we did was because there's so much BS. I mean, we are chest deep in BS. I mean, whether it's billboards, commercials, everything is a sales pitch. And I love what happened with the characters, including Meryl's character, the president, who was the living embodiment of BS. But even by the end, you even saw her kind of wake up, and everyone kind of becomes real in the ending because all the BS kind of drifts away. And this is the climate movement. The climate crisis is happening. The science is clear. There are 0% of climate scientists that are debating this. And ultimately, reality always wins. But there's also a beauty to that, even though it's horrible. And I think that's kind of what we went for with the ending, was all the BS faded away, and it was family, and it was friends, and it was breaking bread, and it was Meryl's character being eaten by a brontosaurus. And those are the truths we want to see.
I mean, I feel like there's something going on with you and Meryl. Like, you're so excited about her demise. You're giving her shade about her Zoom skills. Like, y'all might need some kind of counseling session or something.
I love Meryl. Unabashedly.
That would be so helpful for me.
Yeah, I'm here for you. I'm here for you. Adam, we can have words later. We heard from Adam earlier, a few minutes ago, about how he came to really censor the climate crisis and opportunity in his life. It was personal, it was family in Oregon, it was air quality indices well beyond anything reasonable that any smartphone should be able to display or any lung should be able to withstand. Meryl, what has been your awakening to the climate crisis, and how does this movie, if at all, play a role in that?
It just ran down the hall. It just almost broke into the room. That's my granddaughter. So I got involved with it was really when I started having children, which is like 100 years ago, 43 years ago, that I got involved with the environmental movement, because the world changes when you move out of your little solipsistic, self-interest as a single person, and start to care about the long-term effects of every act that you have. And so I got involved with, it came to me through about the pesticides on fruit and vegetables. And there was a report that came out then in the late 80s about the residual effects of this. And so I got involved early on with that. And I've followed the climate crisis, because all these things are tied together. It's just like the body, your head and your feet and your gut, and everything is part of the same organism, and one affects the other. So I've always been aware of it, but not really out front, because life takes over. You sort of have kids and you have grandchildren, and your concerns are, I have a career, thanks to Adam, who has no sense, and cast me. But I have been involved tangentially with lots of issues of human justice and women's equality and racial justice and all these things, because they're all the same thing. The fossil fuel, hegemony over the earth and how we're all held in this vice. And it has to do with why there's huge disparity in wealth around the world. It all leads to the same sort of villainous cabal. And if we can just penetrate that, and I mean, we're seeing the results of it in Ukraine right now. We have to break free of this vice that we're all living in. And everything flows from that. All questions of justice, all questions of everything in the world flow from follow the money, follow the money.
You have been flowing with us right now. If you're just tuning in, that's Meryl Streep. We're just here, just hanging out. You're just hanging out on live stream, just kicking like I do. It's my regular Saturday, but for anybody else, for whom this is not normal, we're just kicking it with Meryl Streep, Adam McKay. Bill McKibben has been with us. And Bill, I want to thank you for everything you have done, everything you are doing, everything you're about to do, particularly with this heat pumps for Ukraine, for heat pumps for peace and freedom, this promotion of that our president can actually do something without Joe Manchin to help the people of Ukraine, to help the people of Europe, to help the people of Earth and all life on Earth really withstand what is certainly coming, but doesn't have to be as hard as it is. So thank you so much, Bill, for joining us. I've been holding you hostage in this little Brady Bunch thing. I release you from your Zoom bondage, and we'll be following up with you as everyone else should. Let's
on we go.
Yeah. Meryl and Adam, I want to talk to you all about the actions you've been taking in terms of City National Bank, subsidiary of the Royal Bank of Canada. Adam, can you talk about what you've been working on with Mark and others to support the Wet'suwet'en people? Have you been moving your money yourself? Are you talking to your colleagues about moving their money? Where are things?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's funny. The micro is the macro is the, the micro is the macro. And you look at this story about what's going on in Canada and these big banks financing these horrific fossil fuel projects right in the face of overwhelming evidence. I mean, we're already losing. This is something that people don't talk about. This study was just published in The Lancet. We're already losing 5 million people a year to heat changes. That's we're already there. I mean, we're looking at an event that will create migrations, uninhabitable zones across the planet, potentially billions of deaths. Some argue an extinction level event for mammals above the size of a possum. And yet these banks just keep churning along. And you look at what this bank is doing up in Canada, and yes, they own City National Bank, which I bank with. And so I'm being very clear. I will stop banking with City National Bank if this continues. You're having your moment. You're being called out. This is unacceptable. We are talking about, like Meryl said, our kids, our neighbors, our friends. We're talking about human life. We're talking about the life of these beautiful animals, the ocean on the planet. Unacceptable. And I think the other big thing we have to be aware of is who we're talking to. And Meryl talked about this a little bit. We're talking to boardrooms. We're talking to people. Talk about AI. AI is already here. And AI is the corporate charter. That is what AI is, because it gets human beings to act not like human beings. Yeah. It gets human beings to kill each other, to turn each other into statistics. And we need to be very clear. I'm accusing City National Bank, I'm accusing the Royal National Bank of Canada of corporate malfeasance, of fiduciary failure of their job. And I said this yesterday, I'll say it again. You think the scarlet letter that the Sackler family wears is big? Wait till you see the size of the letter you're going to wear. Wait till the other CEOs, the corporate boards of these oil companies, our Congress, who is asleep at the wheel, the mayors across this country, the governors. Wait till you see the scarlet letter you wear, because we are watching, we are aware, and you are failing.
Okay, so that sounded like some threats and some facts, and I I want to bring a superhero back on the screen who has the power to morph into something big and green and powerful, which is what we need right now. Mark Ruffalo, get back up in here. How do you respond to this level of assertiveness from Adam here in terms of the fire and the fury, the love and the passion with which he is joining this No Dirty Banks, No More Dirty Banks movement?
You're muted, Mark.
Oh, it's a classic moment. You're on mute. Yes. That is the hashtag of our time. Yes.
Me and Meryl.
All right, go restart what you were saying.
First of all, I just want to just say how happy I am that Meryl is here and I'm here with Adam. It's so meaningful to be here with my entertainment family. He's right. The one thing that the banks do understand now is this issue. They have risk committees that look over this, that see all the science, that know every dimension and every nook and cranny of this. They've been using the 2050 divestment as a kind of greenwashing while front loading fossil fuels and extraction and pipelines and infrastructure up until that point. I mean, they're dumping everything into it. And so, we're talking about people who only speak, what the language they're speaking is money. And the language they're speaking is liability. And we have to, we've tried so hard to speak to them about morality, about reason, about loss, about, indigenous rights. We've tried to take that approach. The science, everything, we've tried to take that approach, and it's just not getting through. And so we have to talk money now, because that is the language they speak. They talk money, they talk liability, and so how do we get through to them? It's our money. We are funding this collectively. I mean, the moment we're living in now, the pandemic, the Ukrainian war, climate change, it's all telling us the message, the overarching message is, this is us. We are in this together. We have a responsibility to each other. And we are part of the problem. And our money is funding this. And we have to say no to that. For the banks to understand, to take action. We have to say, we're going to sue you for malfeasance, for them to say, oh, this is risky business, we have to stop. We have to go to where this stuff is starting. The banks, they control policy, they control legislation, they make or break an industry. And we have to turn our attention to them now. And they know, Dave McKay knows. Meryl's right. Dave McKay can be the hero here. He's planted himself as the hero. He talks about climate change. He talks about indigenous rights, and he has to take it to the next step. He has to put his money where his mouth is, and he can be the hero. And I invite his wife and his children and his grandchildren, whoever knows him, to say, come on, Dad, Grandpa, hubby, do the right thing here. You have a chance to change the whole dynamic. One man can change the whole dynamic. If RBC decided to change the dynamic, every single bank in the world would follow them, because they would know that the whole world is behind them. The world is dying, but the people of the world are dying for this to happen.
That's right.
So Meryl, I hear you chiming in. It's perfect, because I wanted to know, I saw you signed on to the No More Dirty Banks, and what happens when Meryl Streep calls the bank and says, I'm gonna move my money if you don't get right, with the future.
Yeah. Well, if only it were there, but it's not. I don't have any leverage, but you just think, Mark, yeah, it is money that moves a certain. It's money that moves the world. but it has to do with your worldview. What matters in the end? You know, what matters in the end to people? What matters to a man who's powerful? His bank account matters a lot. How he's seen by his children and his grandchildren matters a lot. A book that meant a lot to me that I read this year is Speed and Scale, which is John Doerr's book, who's an investor, early investor in Silicon Valley and a lot of big companies, tech companies. And his mind was changed, not by Al Gore's movie, but by the dinner after Al Gore's movie, where he sat around with a bunch of similarly placed men who were all there with their wives and kids. And they went around talking about, yeah, well, you know, we don't know if this is definitely caused by human actions and blah, 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 to quote Greta. But they came to his daughter, who was then 15. And she said, I'm mad and I'm scared. And your generation did this and you better fix it. And that was in 2007. And he changed his life. I mean, he just upended it and took all of his analytic skills as an engineer, as an investment banker, and made connections with people around the world and set out in this long-term study to figure out a course of action for people in the world to correct this. I'm not qualified to say it's doable, but it's made a big splash, and I think it's great. So one man's change of heart can come to him through his daughter, or it can come through his wallet, you know. But which one really moves him? Which one really makes him change his life? I think it's from the people he loves. So that's my argument with you. Not an argument. We have to join forces. Yeah.
I think that's true. I to add to that, I unfortunately about 3-4 years ago had a heart attack, and I was lucky. It was fairly mild, but when you're having a heart attack, you don't know that it's mild. You're in the back of an ambulance, you're rushing to the hospital. And I would just say this to any CEO, board member, congressperson, anyone who's in a position to make decisions. You do not care about your stock price. You don't care about how much money is in your bank. You don't care about any of that junk when you stare at that, when you look at your own mortality. So I've always wondered with some of these people, the CEO of Exxon, the CEO of the Bank of Canada, like Dave McKay, you really think you're going to care about that in that moment? I call it kind of the dying breath strategy. And having been,
I call it the statin strategy.
Hey, listen, we
whoever's on statins, you know.
I want to give you all a chance. We have these youth climate activists coming up right after you, and I suspect, because I dragged you in here somewhat against your will, Mark, you might have to go the soonest. But starting with Mark, if you want, before you bounce, if you have anything to say to the next generation of activists and climate warriors, and what they're trying to do for all of us, as well as on behalf of, you know, the indigenous people whose land that we are trying to respect increasingly. Final words from you, Mark, on either of those topics, and we can let you go. And I'll ask the same of Adam.
No, my pleasure. You know, just building off of what the point Meryl's making. You know, these kids, the kid did see Al Gore's movie, and she did hear the message that was coming out, and her vision, her moral center hasn't been affected by the things, by the bank account, by the things that cloud our judgment in these issues, right? And it was her speaking out after finding out the truth, the inconvenient truth. And so it is really there's many fronts we have to approach this issue on. And they right now are they have the moral clarity. They have the pure moral voice right now, and they have the power. And by the way, it's their world.
It's on their heads.
It is. This is what we're giving them, and the next 7 generations.
Mm-hmm.
And so the most we can do right now is listen to them, empower them, and take action on their behalf. It's the least we can do. We've all done so well, not all of us. No, a lot of us haven't done well by this system. Most people haven't done well by this system. They're bringing forward a new way of being, and we have to respect that and hold them up. And that's what I would say. And I love them for what they're doing.
Hear, hear.
Thank you, Mark.
Here, here.
Adam, do you want anything to tap in?
Yeah, there's a great speech, which I'm old enough to not remember firsthand, but to remember. And it was a young orator back in the 1960s named Mario Savio. And he was on the Berkeley campus. Mark knows it, Meryl knows it, a lot of you know it. And I would just say to the young activists, look it up. Because what you see in the tone of his voice, and it's a very passionate speech about the Vietnam War, about inequality, about racism. But what you see in his voice, and I don't always pull it off, is that he's strong, yet there's love, yet there's humor, yet there's creativity. There's anger, but it's a righteous anger. And all those things can coexist. And when you see it in this Mario Savio speech, it's one of the most beautiful speeches you'll ever see. I mean, it's to me, the MLK, I Have a Dream speech is right up there with that. And it's a flash of light that we need more of in the world today. So I would say to the young activists, you lead us, we will follow. We're here. The age of the individual is ending, and the age of the group is beginning. The age of community is beginning. So we're here for you. And
Meryl, I'll give you the last opportunity to share any words for our climate youth activists or just youth in general. Thank you.
I wish I were one of you. I wish I had 80 more years to work on this. God willing, we have 80 more years. But you're there, you're on the front lines. And I think, just as an actor, I guess I just got so frustrated when all the superhero movies started happening. I don't know, I wasn't into them. And yet that is the vernacular of our time. And it made me think about the climate crisis too, because I think everybody has a superpower. I mean, I really understand that certainly Malala Yousafzai took something horrific that happened to her. And she was not anybody that you would think could move the world, but she did. And Greta Thunberg has done the same. Joan of Arc did it before her. I mean, we have these voices that you would think are powerless. You may think nobody knows me, but now we live in a world where every voice can be amplified. And so keep speaking up, keep looking up, and we depend on you.
Keep speaking up, keep looking up, except don't look at superhero movies with Mark Ruffalo in them. As I noticed these subtle, I love this triangle of shade that we've had here. Mark, AKA Hulk, thank you so much. Adam, thank you so much. Meryl, thank you so much. It's been an honor. And we
Me
will
too.
Look forward to seeing how this No More Dirty Banks campaign goes, but also how our using all the power we have to create the world we want to live in goes. And I want to thank each of you for being a part of that.